Namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati nishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Shri Govindaya Namo Namaha. We are reading from Srimad Bhagwatam, first canto, chapter 12, text number 35 and 36. 36 doesn't have any purport, so we'll be reciting 35 and I'll just read out 36 later on. Ahuto Bhagavan Ragya Yajitva Dvijanripam Uvasa Katichinmasa Suhridam Priyakamaya Ahuto Bhagavan Ragya Yajitva Dvijanripam Uvasa Katichinmasan Suhridam Priyakamyaya Ahuto Bhagavan Ragya Yajitva Dujanripam Uvasa Katichinmasan Suhridam Priyakamyaya. I will also just recite 36 and then you can repeat for 35. Tato Rajyabhyajataha Krishnaya Sahabandhuhi Yayodva Pratim Brahman Sajuno Yadukirgataha. Ahuto Bhagavan Ragya Yajitva Dvijanripam Uvasa Katichinmasa Suhridam Priyakamyaya. Online on Zoom.
Can you hear us, Prabhu?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Ahato Bhagavan Rajna Yajayitva Dvijanripam Uvasa Katichinmasan Suhridam Priyakamyaya.
Ahuto Bhagavan Rajna Yajayitva Dvijanripam Uvasa Katichinmasan Suridam Priyakamyaya.
Anyone else? What to a translation? Ahuta, being called by Bhagavan, Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Yagya, by the king. Yajayitva, causing to be performed. Vijay, by the learned Brahmanas. Nripam, on behalf of the king, Uvasa recited, Katichit, a few, Masan, months, Suhridam, for the sake of the relatives, Priya Kamyaya, for the pleasure. Translation. Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, being invited to the sacrifices by Maharaj Yudhishthira, saw to it that they were performed by the qualified, twice-born Brahmanas. After that, for the pleasure of the relatives, the Lord remained a few months. Please repeat. Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, being invited to the sacrifices by Maharaj Yudhishthira, saw to it that they were performed by qualified twice-born Brahmanas. After that, for the pleasure of the relatives, the Lord remained a few months. Purport by His Divine Graces, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Lord Sri Krishna was invited by Maharaj Yudhishthira to look into the supervision of performances of Yajna, the Lord, to abide by the orders of his elderly cousins, caused by the performance of Yajnas by learned twice-born Brahmanas. Simply taking birth in the family of Brahmana does not make one qualified to perform Yajnas. One must be twice born by proper training and initiation from the bona fide Acharya. The once born scion of Brahmana families are equal with the once born Shudras, and such Brahmana bandhus or unqualified once born scions must be rejected by any purpose of religious or Vedic function. Lord Sri Krishna was entrusted to look after this arrangement, and perfect as he is, he caused the yajnas to be performed by the bona fide twice-born Brahmanas for successful execution. We'll also read the translation of 36 because it doesn't have any purport. The next one. Tato ragya bhayanu nukyatah krishnaya sah bandhuvi yayo dvara vatim brahman sarjuno yadu bhir vritaha. O Shaunaka, thereafter the Lord, having bade farewell to King Yudhishthira, Draupadi and other relatives, started for the city of Dwarka, accompanied by Arjuna and other members of the Yadu dynasty. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the first canto, 12th chapter of Srimad Bhagwatam, entitled Birth of Emperor Parikshit. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakricata Sahagana Raghunathan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhamritamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sandubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishnaprishthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nite Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pandam Karoti Shri Chaitanya Hare Krishna. So I welcome you all to the morning Srimad Bhagwatam class. Today we are reading from first canto, chapter 12, text number 35 and 36. And this is also the last verses of this chapter. And thus we are ending or completing the 12th chapter of Srimad Bhagwatam entitled Birth of Emperor Parikshit. So like we discussed in previous classes, there were various layers of conversation that is happening in Srimad Bhagavatam. Started with various rishis inquiring, and then there is a conversation about Sutta Goswami and the rishis, and then Shukadeva Goswami and the rishis. That's the first layer, and then the second layer of conversation that is happening between Sutta Goswami and the rishis. And then he's narrating again Srimad Bhagavatam, and then there was a topic like how Krishna seen Parikshit Maharaj, and then he was about to leave for Dwarka, so there was a series of verses offered by Kunti Devi, and she was offering those verses to Krishna, and then Krishna leaves, and then there is a section like how Krishna entered Dwarka and how he was welcomed by various Dwarkavasis. And then again, these rishis they inquired about the original question, like how Parikshit was actually saved, because initially Goswami he just skimmed through that topic. So again, these rishis they are inquiring again what are the qualities of this Parikshit Maharaj and how he was born. So again, that topic came up, and then there is a description like how he was born and protected by Lord Krishna, and then his qualities, and again there is this description like how Yudhishthira Maharaj performed various Ashwamedha Yajnas, 3 Ashwamedha Yajnas, and then Krishna making sure that everything is done properly. Basically, Maharaj Yudhishthira saw to it that the Yajnas were performed by qualified Brahmanas, and for that Krishna was there, and then he resided after for few months for the pleasure of relatives. And in the next verse, it is in 36, if you see, O Shaunaka, thereafter the Lord, having bade farewell to King Yudhishthira, Draupadi and other relatives started for the city of Dwarka, accompanied by Arjuna and other members of Yadu dynasty. So just make a note of this, that this time Krishna is not going alone. He is accompanied by Arjuna and other members of Yadu dynasty. The previous one, I think Krishna, he also bade farewell to Arjuna at that point of time. So these are the two separate things, and then what happened subsequently accompanied, because he's going along with Arjuna and other members of Yadu dynasty. We'll see in the next chapters, upcoming chapters of Srimad Bhagwatam. But for now, you can just see that like this time Krishna is not going alone, he is accompanied by Arjuna and other members of Yadu dynasty. So like we see in the text 35, Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of God, had been invited to the sacrifice by Maharaj Yudhishthir, saw to it that they were performed by qualified twice-born Brahmanas. And after that, for the pleasure of relatives, Lord remained a few months. So in this purport, Prabhupada specifically mentions about the qualifications of Brahmana, what is the meaning of twice-born and once-born. And if you see the Brahmana Bandhus, or like even, for example, twice-born was not only for the Brahmana class, it was also for the Vaishyas, it was also for the Kshatriyas. So basically it was for the three different classes. But majorly it is for the Brahmanas, we refer them as Dvija, but it was also applicable for the other two classes as well. And so much so, like they have also specific thread ceremonies, and even the colors of the thread. For Brahmanas, it used to be like it is to be made out of cotton and it is to be white. For Kshatriyas, the color of the thread was the little reddish color, and for Vaishyas, it was little yellowish, like they would add some turmeric. Even the material, I think, for the Vaishyas, it is linen. It's not the cotton that they use. So that used to be a tradition, but mostly now, I think the Brahmanas, the only one who are following it, maybe out of family tradition. But if you see, like that was the practice for anything in these three classes, and they would start the study of Vedic scriptures and other whatever teachings. Like if they are Kshatriyas, they would be learning their arts and weapon and different things, and also they are also learning Shastras. So this is the beginning of their learning. So this twice born is somebody who is qualified. And even if you see, even if they have learned something and if they don't have this quality, many times in Mahabharata, you see Ashwatthama, he is also referred as Brahmana Bandhu. Even though he's like, by birth he's Brahmana, if you see by family lineage, he is a Brahmana, but because he didn't have those qualities of a Brahmana, so he was always referred as a Brahmana Bandhu, not as not as a Brahmana himself. Whereas Kripacharya and others, like they have also opted for fighting. Like basically, that's not the prime duty of a Brahmana, but because they were also performing a role of Acharya, they were teaching the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So they are also, that is the role, because that is the prime duty of Brahmana, to teach as well, to learn and also to teach. So Yagya, Yagan, and Pathan, Pathan, and Dana, and so like they have to learn the Shastras deeply, they have to teach it, they have to do the Yagyas and also be part of the various Yagyas, and also they accept the charity and give the charity. I think before that, I think Radhika Mataji was making a statement, or like she was asking, the kings would donate a lot of cows, horses, and different things to the Brahmanas. So what they used to do it out of this, because their prime duty is to teach and do the other three things. So that the answer to those things is like the last one, because they would utilize only which is required for them, and rest, it is also duty of Brahmana to give charity. So it's not just accepting charity, but also to give charity. So they would also distribute to the various people who are in need, and they would keep whatever is enough for them or like sufficient for them to do. And similarly, in the previous purports, if you see, Prabhupada mentioning about the gold, like even they could carry some gold, but there were still a lot of gold which is kept there. So that is another thing. And even few words before, it's very interesting that few words before, I think Jai Govinda Prabhu was giving the class, and it was mentioned like just the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra is like it gives much more benefits than like if you perform many Ashwamedha Yagyas. And in some few verses, Krishna is asking Yudhishthira Maharaj to perform this Ashwamedha Yagya. So it's like quite an irony, or like if we see it as a contradiction. Like if we do something for the pleasure of Lord Hari, it is as good as like performing many Ashwamedha Yagyas. At the same time, Krishna is also instructing Yudhishthira Maharaj to perform Ashwamedha Yagya. So how to understand these things, or like how to understand these contradictions? So the answer to this is like, I was listening to one of the senior devotees, and one sannyasi was mentioning about this point, and he was saying because other people who are not capable of performing these kind of yagyas, or like they don't have the capacity to actually perform this kind of elaborate sacrifices and different rituals, they, of course, they can do whatever they can as a service to the Lord. But somebody who is king, who has all this capacity, and if he's not performing these activities or not engaging his opulences and wealth and all those facilities in service of Krishna, then it would not be a proper example or a standard which has to be followed by a king. So for example, if somebody has like millions of dollars and he's just utilizing like $1 for the service of the Lord, at least some portion of his earning should be engaged in the service of the Lord, so that his wealth is also purified. If we just see just the external point of view, but if he has more capacity to perform some service to the Lord or to the devotees, so that has to be performed. So there are like two different aspects. One is something which you are not qualified and you are doing something beyond your qualification. So that is also not so much favorable for devotional service. At the same time, there is also spiritual impertinence and spiritual importance. These are the 2 points which is mentioned by Shivram Maharaj in his book. And he was saying, like somebody who has more capacity, he can do much more, and he's not doing according to his capacity for the service of the Lord. That is also not favorable for Lord. So if you're not qualified and you are doing something much more beyond that, just out of something which you wanted to, and that's why you are doing, and not for the pleasure of God, that is also not so favorable in Krishna consciousness. At the same time, you can give much more, but you are not giving it, not doing it. That is also not so much favorable. So whatever you have, you try to utilize for the service and the pleasure of the Lord. It's not just about the money, it can be sharing the knowledge of Krishna consciousness, or maybe if you are empowered in certain skills or some sevas, if you have those capacities and if you are holding back and not using that in the service of Krishna, then that is also not so much appreciated. So in both cases, it is something which has to be done. And in every, I would say there are like two sets of people. I mean, some people have half knowledge, but they are very enthusiastic about giving it. So that is also not so right situation, because they don't have proper knowledge, but at the same time they want to like give it to somebody else because they want to maybe just preach or something. But that is also not the proper preaching. And at the same time, somebody who has a lot of knowledge but is not sharing with others. So in that way also, that knowledge is still with that person and not sharing with others. So that is also not the proper situation to be in. So in both the cases, or like it can be of any skills or knowledge or anything, this is the point which that Maharaj was mentioning, and at this point of time, because he was the emperor of the world, Yudhishthira Maharaj's duty was to perform this sacrifices as a king or establishing himself as the emperor, and because he can do it, and there is a capability in the emperor, Parikshit Maharaj, Yudhishthira Maharaj, so he has to do this as a performance to establish himself as the bona fide emperor of this world. And at the same time, the second reason was because Krishna was also like glorifying Yudhishthira Maharaj by doing this sacrifices. Because by doing this Ashwamedha sacrifices, it is established in the nearby kingdom or anybody who are in the nearby places. It is said that like of course there are like elaborate various rituals that has to be performed during the Ashwamedha Yajna. And even if you see in Ramayana, Lord Rama also performed Ashwamedha Yajna. And one of the first ritual of this is like they select a proper horse, which is like white in color, and there are like marks on his forehead, and there are like different specific markings for that. And they would perform puja to that particular horse, and then they would let loose that horse to roam around for at least 1 year. And wherever this horse goes, that territory is actually known to be the territory of that particular emperor who is performing that Ashwamedha Yajna. And if any kingdom or like any king who want to challenge the superiority of that particular king, then they would capture that horse and there would be a fight between them. So that was also an establishing the power or like supremacy of that particular emperor. And along with that horse, there would be almost like 100 different soldiers along with the horses and different. So there would be a group of soldiers who would accompany that particular horse, and they would not hinder with the movement of the horse. Like they would be with the horse, but they would not like change the course of the horse, and they would let loose the horse to go anywhere the horse desires to go. So as if the opposing king is there and he's challenging that king or the superiority of the king, so what he will do is he will capture that horse, and he has to fight and defeat the soldiers who are accompanying the horse. If that happens, then that sacrifice is not successful. I mean, that is not considered as a successful Ashwamedha Yajna. So this would happen for 1 year, and after that the horse would be brought again back, and there would be like different yajnas. And throughout that 1 year, there used to be a different the rituals. Like there are some rituals in the morning, there are some rituals in the evening. In the morning, there would be brahmanas who would be glorifying different pastimes about the Lord and about the qualities of the king. And in the evening, Kshatriyas would gather and they would discuss about the wars, how fearless the king is, or like about his glories in terms of the Kshatriya qualities. So that was the custom, and that would go on for like almost 1 year. And there would be different scholars, they would come and debate, and there are different rituals, and that has to be performed for at least 1 year. So if we see in the story of Ramayana, so that was the pretext of Lord Ram eating love kush, and so Lord Ram, he started the Ashwamedha again, and then he let loose that particular horse for Yajna, and it was captured by Love and Kush, and that's how like they defeated all the armies of Lord Ram, and it was challenged, and then Lakshmana came and he was also defeated, and then Lord Ram came finally, and then they saw Love and Kush. And during that time, it was the plan, of course, of Valmiki Rishi, because I was saying there was also a ritual that in the morning and evening there would be certain glorification and something. So for that 1 year, because Lord Ram was performing this Ashwamedha Yajna, Love and Kush, the plan of Valmiki Muni was actually to bring Love and Kush to the court of Lord Ram and to recite this Ramayana which he has composed. And that's how like they sing this Ramayana in the evening, because that was performed by actually the Kshatriyas, basically about glorifying Lord or the king who is present there. So that was the first time Love and Kush they described Ramayana, and they described about basically they sang the Ramayana during that court. So that's like the basic background and like why it was required for Yudhishthira Maharaj to actually perform. Two prime reasons. One is because he was the king, emperor, he wanted to establish himself as the emperor. Krishna wanted to basically establish Yudhishthira Maharaj in that position. And if there are any challenges nearby in the other kingdoms, they can still rule. The kings can still rule. It's not like they are going and snatching their land. They can still rule, but they will be ruling under the guidance of the emperor. Like there would be emperor and there were small kings in the different regions, and they would rule in their particular region, but under the guidance of the emperor. So that is to establish the emperor in that particular region, and that was the ritual, and that's why Krishna wanted Yudhishthira Maharaj to perform this yajna. And there is also an interesting point, like Krishna made sure that there are like qualified brahmanas and twice born, and there should be proper ceremony which has to be done. And one time I remember, His Holiness, I think, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was mentioning once, there were no rains in Tirupati, and that time they called all the qualified brahmanas to chant the Vedic mantras. And there would be also brahmanas who would be like invigilator, or like they would check everything, whether they are chanting the mantras properly or not, if there are like any mispronunciations or if there are any discrepancies. So there would be a set of Brahmana who would just be observers, making sure that everything is in place. So even for the yagyas, there would be like four sets of like priests that are required. One would be the one whose sole job was to chant the mantras and making sure that everything is properly done. Another set would be, they would be just arranging paraphernalias and different things. They are called like the Agni Mudras, like, or like performing various Agni Mudras or giving oblations. That was their prime duty. Others would be chanting various hymns and other mantras. And there would be someone who would be observing, making sure that everything is done properly. So, because in Yagya and Tantras, like it is very important to perform the like things very perfectly. If there are any discrepancies, it will not give the desired benefit. And that's why Maharaj was mentioning that there would be well qualified twice born Brahmanas who are like born in like the same lineage. They are also Brahmanas by birth and qualities, and they were chanting these mantras, and also they were somebody who's making sure that it happens, and they were doing it in the very holy place. Everything is very, very pure and everything, and still it didn't actually rain. And then it was near Hyderabad, and Prabhupada said like Prabhupada along with his foreign disciples, they said like, okay, we will perform Sankirtan, and they did the Nagyar Sankirtan and they also chanted, and next day it started raining, and there was a big headline on the newspaper that Hare Krishna's brought rain in Hyderabad and the nearby region. So Maharaj was saying, like in this yuga, in Kali Yuga, this is the main yajna that has to be performed. So the effectiveness of performing Sankirtan is much more like that rather than performing any other activities. Or even if they are performing very perfectly, the results which is got by the so-called like devotees who didn't have that pure background, but when they started practicing Krishna consciousness and they are performing what is bona fide and under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, the impact or the chanting of Hare Krishna brought much more result than something which they were trying to do very systematically or like for the yajnas and everything. But the point is, everything which has to be done in this yuga has to be also complemented or like to be followed by the Harinam Sankirtan. So that's the prime yagya of this particular yuga. Similarly, the word twice born is also referred in various places in Srimad Bhagwatam. There are also sections of Krishna Balram visiting forest. So in that section, Krishna is glorifying the forest of Vrindavan. He's glorifying the trees, basically. Krishna and Balram, they are walking. And Krishna is not saying directly, but he's saying in a way that just see Balram, how these trees are so beautiful. They are like the ascetics. They are performing yajna austerities, basically austerities, because they are standing like a yogi on one leg. They are standing still and they are tolerating everything, all the heat, cold, rain, everything they are tolerating, and they are fixed in one place, and they are there so that once they are desiring that at least once in their life you walk in between them and maybe you will touch them someday. So basically it's a poetic analogy in that way, like Krishna is glorifying Balram in indirect way, and he's saying, just like the yogis, they offer all their fruits to you, Krishna. Balram is saying, just like all the yogis, they offer their fruits to you, they become successful. Like that, oh Krishna, now Balram is saying, this ascetic like trees, they are offering all their fruits to you. So their life is also successful. Basically, he's referring to the fruits, all the fruits of the trees. Basically, they are offering to Krishna. So poetically, then Balramji is also glorifying Krishna and saying that their tapasya is successful, their austerities are successful because now they have produced these fruits out of this austerity and now they are offering it to you, Krishna. But how did they get these qualities? So that's the next question which Krishna says. And then there's a commentator on this Srimad Bhagavatam, this particular verse, Sri Harishwariji, he said that like they got these qualities because they associated with the Dvijas. Now the Dvija means two things. One is like, of course, here it means twice born, somebody who's learned, somebody who's like a Brahmana, and they got these qualities from this. But at the same time, if you just see on the other level, he is referring to the birds. Birds are also called Dvija. Why? Because they are also called twice born. Once they are born with the egg, and then after the egg, they are again born. So in that way, the birds are also referred sometimes as Dvija. So in this poetic way, Krishna is also saying the fruits, this trees got this wonderful qualities because they are associating with these birds, like Dvija, because they are also twice born. So in that way, there are two level of comparisons. One is referring to just the external trees, birds, and fruit, but also referring to the yogis or the rishis or like the ascetics associating with the blood and brahmanas, witches, and offering their fruits. Also, like sometimes the teeth we see on our mouth, they are also called twice born because once you are child, like there is a, like milk teeth, like the small teeth, like they come and they go, and then there is a stronger teeth that comes. So even sometimes teeth are like referred as Dvija because they are also twice born, and that is also referred by one of the commentators, Harishuri, like which I was mentioning. Sometimes like adhara is also means like it means the lips, and that's why when Krishna broke the pot and Mother Yashoda left him in the Damodar Leela, Krishna is out of anger, he is punishing the adhara like this. He's holding the lips through his the teeth. The meaning of this, like Harishuri, he gives that, like he's punishing the adhara with the dvijas. Like basically, he's referring to the teeth as well. So in various verses, there are different meanings of like dvija or like the twice born, and poetically also various commentators have used the purports of Srimad Bhagwatam and giving it like a much more devotional or rasic point of view to various pastimes which are happening. So this Witcher word, I mean something, of course, somebody who is initiated. For example, like in like 2-3 days back, there was I think the appearance or disappearance day of Sharanga Thakur. So if you see Saranga Murari Thakur, he got this name Saranga Murari Thakur because of one interesting pastime that happened. So he used to live in one of the islands of Navadvip. He used to live in Madhudrundvi, and there was a village called Mamagachi. And Saranga Thakur, because he was always absorbed in Lord Chaitanya's pastime and he was always chanting Hare Krishna mantra, he was one of the associates of Lord Chaitanya. And he used to live in one particular place and he would sit under a particular tree called a bakula tree, and he would sit there and chant near the Ganges. He would sit there whole day, he would chant Hare Krishna mantra, and he was very happy, self-satisfied. And many times Lord Chaitanya would approach Saranga Thakur and he would ask like, can you please also start preaching? You're chanting, you are such a great devotee, you're preaching, but I mean you should start preaching, you should make disciples. And that was the request which is given by Lord Chaitanya. And repeatedly he would come and ask Saranga Thakur, like, you should start making disciples, you should initiate some people, you are such an elevated devotee. And it is said like Saranga Thakur, he was so strong devotee, sometimes just to avoid like other distractions and other peoples, he would sometimes go underwater in Ganga and he would be there for like days together, just chanting Hare Krishna inside the Ganga water. And sometimes he would just go in the forest if he happened to see some tigers, like the Bengal tigers in that particular region. He would just slap the tigers and the tigers would start chanting Hare Krishna, and he would just see some snakes going around, he would tap them and they would again, like they would offer obeisances to him and in that way. So his style of preaching was of course very empowered and different, but Lord Chaitanya wanted him to be established as a spiritual master and he should take some disciples. So after various requests, he would neither say no to Lord Chaitanya or neither he would accept to those situations. We sometimes see there are some devotees like that, like if you do or give some sevas, they would neither say no, neither say they would say yes, but they would never do or like in that way. So there are certain things. But he was not at that level. Basically, he was very elevated. And he was thinking himself that I am not so qualified to actually be a spiritual master and to initiate this kind of, to initiate the disciples. But one day Lord Chaitanya saw like there was a particular tree under which he would sit and chant his rounds. So he saw that the bakul tree was actually drying up and there were like it was practically dead. Lord Chaitanya came and embraced that bakula tree, and then that tree again became rejuvenated and became just like a very full-grown big tree. I mean, it was already a big tree, but it was almost dead. There were no leaves. But as soon as Lord Chaitanya embraced it, it again became green, and it was giving shade to Saranga Thakur. So in that way, Lord Chaitanya was also demonstrating anything which is dear or anything which is serving the devotees, they received the mercy of Lord Chaitanya first because that particular tree was serving Saranga Thakur in a way that tree was giving the shade and he was chanting that particular praise. So Lord Chaitanya actually came and embraced and rejuvenated that particular tree. So in a way, the tree was dying and again he was born. It's like in a twice born way, it was done. And then Lord Chaitanya again insisted Murari Thakur or like Saranga Thakur, that time his name was Saranga Thakur, and he said, like just like I did to this tree, you should also do this to the people in general. Basically, he's again insisting him to go and preach and take disciples. So that day, when he understood this message from Lord Chaitanya, Saranga Thakur said, oh, like in his mind, he thought, okay, whoever I meet, the first person in the morning, I will initiate that person. And that is the only disciple that I will take. And I will, in that way also, I will continue to do my bhajan and also follow the instruction of Lord Chaitanya. So next day, early morning in Brahma Muhurat, almost like 3:30 a.m., it was very dark. He was doing his oblation in Ganga, and he was taking bath. So something that comes and hits his leg, basically, touches his leg, and he sees that there's a child who was dead. So he brings that child. So at that point of time in Bengal, there was tradition, like if anybody or like a small child or anybody who dies, they don't cremate or like bury that person out of snake bite. If the person is died because of snake bite, they would not bury or burn that person. They would put them in the river. So that was also happened, I think, for the case of Bhima, like when he was poisoned, he was also put in the water, and then he got bitten again by the snake, and he becomes like rejuvenated again. Okay, coming back to basically the story. So this boy was actually from a different village, and this boy was also bitten by a snake. And because they were not cremating or burning, but burying that body, they put the boy on the river. So basically, they put the dead body on a wooden base, and after that, like they kind of just let that body go. And actually, that body came and hit the feet of this Saranga Thakur. And then, as soon as he saw, and because he has taken this vow that I will initiate the first person I meet, so he actually gave the mantra, the Maha Mantra, and he actually said the Hare Krishna or like the initiating mantra to this particular dead boy. And immediately after hearing this, as we have seen, like he could even preach to the tigers and the snakes. So this boy, because of hearing the pure chanting of Hare Krishna mantra, he also got rejuvenated and he became alive. And then he said, like, my name is actually Murari. And that day he was made as Murari Das, as the initiated disciple of Saranga Thakur. And this news actually spread all over. And that's why, like, his disciple, Saranga Thakur's disciple, is known as Murari Thakur. And Saranga Thakur also got his name as Saranga Murari Thakur because he is the Thakur of Murari, the son who died. And the glories of Saranga Thakur and Murari Thakur actually spread all over the nearby villages. And the parents of this boy, they got to know that the boy is actually alive. So they came to Saranga Thakur and to Murari Thakur and asked, can we take you back? Now you can come to home. And then Murari Thakur actually he denies. He said, like, the body which you have given me has actually died. But this new body is actually given by my spiritual master. So the purpose of this new body is actually for serving the spiritual master. So that is what is actually also happening during the initiation.
There is one body, of course, in a way, the body which is given by our parents. There is a duty towards them to perform like whatever responsibilities that we have. But when we are also taking initiation from our spiritual master, that is also a birth, second birth. And that also have some responsibilities that we have to perform towards our spiritual master. And that is also second birth for the Dvijas in this text, or like in other words, like somebody who is twice born. So Murari Thakur, he gives this explanation because this is the body which is given by my spiritual master. It has to be utilized in the service of spiritual master. And then he dedicated his life only for the preaching work or like the service of the spiritual master. So in this case also, if you see, the tree was also Dvija because he was again twice born by Lord Chaitanya, and here this person, Murari Thakur, was also Dvija, made Dvija by Sharanga Thakur. And now also if you go to that particular place, this tree is still there, the Bakula tree, where devotees go and embrace that tree because that was touched by Lord Chaitanya, and then they feel the touch, maybe some experience of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. I've not been there, but maybe one day I'll go and see. And there are also Dvija, of course, in Krishna Lila, there are different Dvijas, Madhumangal. The rest of the other boys, they were like the Vaishyas, but Madhumangal was the son of Sandipani Muni, basically. And he was a Dvija, and many times he would refer, like, I am the Dvija, like, you should give me some laddus, because he would like a lot of laddus, and I will give you the blessings. And Krishna would also, so many times he would joke with Madhumangal. So Madhumangal and his sister was Nandimukhi. They were the daughter and son of Sandipani Muni, who used to live in Avantipur, in Ujjain. And they actually came to Vrindavan along with their grandmother, Purnamasi. So they went to, because she became widowed and she wanted to kind of renounce this thing. So she, along with the grandchildren, she moved to Vrindavan near Nandagram, and she used to every day, she used to visit Nandagram, the house of Yashoda Maya and Nanda Baba, every day. And she, all the Brajavasis, they would consider her to be their like a spiritual master, because she was living a life of ascetic, kind of very renounced life, and she was very learned and coming from a great family. His son was Sandipani Muni, who ultimately became the spiritual master of Krishna, or like at least Krishna and Balram, they studied under Sandipani Muni. So Madhumangal in Krishna Lila is the only Dvija, and he would, many times he would joke with Krishna. And there's one pastime, like I think one Gopi, I think Champak Lata Gopi, Krishna and Madhumangal were playing with the balls, and he just referred to Madhumangal, oh Lala, how are you doing? So Lala is like referring to a boy, oh boy, how are you doing? So he then said, like, I am not Lala, I am like 1008 Ashtodarsha, the Dvija, the second initiated, the son of Sandipani Muni, the great Madhumangal, who gives blessings to all the Brajavasis. So in that way, like, he would be playing the role of a Vidushak, basically, like a joke, a person who makes various jokes with Krishna, and is very, very intimate friend of Krishna. And he would always be there with Krishna, serving him and giving pleasure to Krishna. Sometimes he would dance. Sometimes Krishna, along with his friends, they would take prasadam, and there was bumblebee that comes, and then Krishna refers to the bumblebee. Oh bumblebee, why are you troubling my friend Madhumangal? He is very dedicated and focused in eating prasadam. Why are you disturbing him? If you take one bite, he will die out of starvation. So in that way, like the cowherd boys, they would make some fun along with Madhumangal. Sometimes Madhumangal would just dance for the pleasure, and nobody would pay any attention. And then he would try to take some attention, and he would give some like extraordinary moves in front of Krishna and try to grab his attention. So that, because Krishna would laugh by seeing Madhumangal dancing in a funny way, that will give pleasure to Madhumangal, and that was his duty. So always making Krishna laugh, Krishna Balram laugh, all the gopis laugh. And there are various pastimes of this Dvija, Madhumangal. With this, I think we have time. We discussed various Dvijas in this particular verse. If you have any comments and questions.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Really nice class. things that came to mind when you were talking about the 6 activities of the Brahmana. Sometimes also the 6 exchanges of love between Vaishnavas. These 6 exchanges are the foundation of Srila Prabhupada's mission also. Right? Giving in charity, accepting charity. So give prasadam, accept donations, study the Vedas, teach the Vedas. Devotees study, and then they give class, teaching others, performing yajnas and teaching yajnas. We can perform the Sankirtan yajna. We hear from someone else how to do it properly, and we teach others. So this is the activities of the Vaishnavas in Krishna consciousness. That's one point. The other point is you're mentioning the worship, and even the pastime of Krishna walking down the road with the trees, and the worship of the trees. And the Nectar of Devotion mentions that one should not neglect to worship trees like the banyan tree, and of course for Vaishnavas, Tulsi, and for Lord Shiva, I think the Bale trees. And so trees are a very integral part of being worshipped in our culture, which is sometimes very difficult to comprehend. And of course, there are many examples of like the Siddhakul, where the cool twig was put into the ground by Lord Chaitanya and then grew immediately into giving shelter to Harinasta for another worshipful tree. The tree that Krishna jumped off of to kill Kaliya, another worshipable tree. So worshiping trees is not so far-fetched, and certainly respect for trees that give shade, standing there, just like a yogi or like that. And another thing that I found rather amusing was talking about twice-born. And you gave the example of teeth. First you get your baby teeth, and then you get second pair of teeth. And but the problem with that is it just happens on its own. It's not really choice-born because there's nobody to perform. But sometimes, under the direction of a qualified dentist, even the twice-born teeth can take sannyas. You know what I mean?
That's a very interesting point. Actually, it has to also do with the biology or like the anatomy of the body. It said like once you're a baby, you don't have teeth because you're supposed to take something which is liquid. Your digestive system is not that strong. So basically, body is also trying to tell you like, okay, now baby should be given food which is drinking. So as you grow, the digestive system also becomes strong, and that's how you take the teeth, things which you can eat much more stronger. And then, it's like a way, Brahmanas again. And then once you get old, you take the example of teeth taking sannyasa, and it's again the body's digestive system is going down, and it is also getting now's the time to also take things which are like little light, kind of liquid, which has not to be pure, in a way to be done. So again, it's a system, interesting system. Online on Zoom, if you have any questions and comments.
Krishna. Saraswat Mataji, go ahead.
Pronouns to all the Vaishnavas. Thank you for such a wonderful class. And while you were talking about the Ashwamedh yajna that Lord Ramchandra performed, of course, you mentioned love and Kush, and it just took me back to what a wonderful pastime and interaction that was, because as Lord Ramchandra's different brothers went to try and retrieve this horse and failed against two little twin boys, one of the things that stands out is when, I can't remember which brother, it might have been Bharat, they were saying that in our kingdom, everyone has a right to come and meet the king and speak whatever is on their mind, equal rights to all the people. And Love said, equal rights? What about the right of your Maharani Sita? She didn't get the right to defend herself. And then when Lakshman came, he was, very proud, saying that in our kingdom, accurate and fair justice is always administered. And then the other, Kush said, we don't know about that because what we know is that you punish even the innocents. Why did Mother Sita get punished and expelled for no seemingly obvious crime? So don't say that you accurately administer full justice for everyone, because you don't. Of course, it's, this Ashvamedha Yagya was, as you said, the means by which Love and Kush could get the answers to their questions as to why was Mother Sita banished. They at the time didn't know that she was the Maharani, their mother was the Maharani, and that Ramchandra was their father. But I really love this pastime very much. And the other thing I was thinking is when you talked about the devotees that they were due to their Sankirtan, the rain came in Hyderabad, then I'm remembering a class in which they talked of how the devotees are the ones who actually sustain the material universe, because the reason and purpose of this material creation is to give everyone a chance to go home back to Godhead by engaging in devotional service. So His Holiness Chaitanya Maharaj was saying, there are times when there won't be devotees, and that's the time when this Mahapralaya takes place. But he said sometimes Ananta Shish is through him. He employs the 11 Rudras and 12 Adityas, the sons, as a way of destroying, annihilating the entire material creation. Sometimes he just wants to torch it earlier than the prescribed time, because he's just so angry that there's so much sinful activity being conducted, and people aren't, the conditional souls just aren't getting it. And I found that quite nice. Thank you for your class. Hare Krishna.